Have you ever wondered about a time when ideas were so powerful they were literally carved into mountains? Well, today, we're going on a journey back to that very time in ancient India. We're talking about an era of spiritual revolution that didn't just change hearts and minds, but left behind awe-inspiring proof in stone that you can still see today.
So our story begins right here, at the Great Stupa at Sanchi, one of India's most magnificent and best-preserved ancient monuments. I mean, just look at those incredibly detailed carvings. It's like you can almost feel the echoes of history, of 1,000 stories just waiting to be told.
But this isn't just a beautiful structure. It's a mystery written in stone. What kind of beliefs, what kind of powerful ideas could possibly inspire people to create something so massive, so detailed, and so permanent? Well, that's exactly what we're going to uncover together.
To really get Sanchi, we have to rewind the clock, way back, to the mid-first millennium BCE. And this was a wild time, not just in India, but all over the world. Thinkers from Zoroaster in Iran to Socrates in Greece were questioning absolutely everything about life and the universe. And India was right at the heart of this huge intellectual churn.
You see, for hundreds of years, the early Vedic traditions had been the foundation of society, but things were changing. A slow but really profound shift was happening. And by around 600 BCE, a whole new generation of thinkers was on the scene, and they were ready to challenge everything and ask some really tough questions.
So what was this big shift all about? Well, it was a move from the outside to the inside. On one hand, you had these grand collective sacrifices, big public rituals performed for the good of the whole community. But on the other hand, a new focus was emerging, one centered on deeply personal questions, the kind explored in the Upanishads. People were starting to look for answers, not just from the gods, but from within themselves.
And you know where these game-changing ideas were being debated? Not in some fancy palace or grand hall, but in these simple, pointed-roofed huts called Kutagara Shalas. These humble little spots became the hot spots, the epicenters of a new philosophy, where thinkers like Mahavira and the Buddha would stop, debate, and totally reshape the spiritual world.
And out of all these intense debates, two figures in particular emerged. They would offer humanity brand new paths to liberation and fresh answers to those timeless questions about life, death, and suffering.
First up, let's talk about the teachings of Mahavira. Now, he was the 24th in a line of enlightened teachers called Tirthankaras. The word means ford makers, those who help souls cross the river of existence. Isn't that a beautiful concept? It was his message that really shaped the core philosophy of what we know as Jainism.
Now, at the very heart of Jainism is this incredible idea that the entire world is alive. Rocks, water, plants, insects, everything has a soul. And to break free from the cycle of karma, you have to practice asceticism and follow these 5 crucial vows. And notice how number 1 is ahimsa, non-injury. That idea, that simple idea of not causing harm, would become so important in Indian thought for centuries to come.
At the very same time, another great teacher was showing people a different way. We're turning now to Siddhartha Gautama, a prince who famously left his palace searching for the truth. And after he found it, after he attained enlightenment, he became known to the world as the Buddha, the enlightened one.
The Buddha's message was a really powerful diagnosis of the human condition. He taught that everything in the world is temporary, constantly changing, and that sorrow, or dukkha, is a fundamental part of life, fueled by our own desires. But he offered a solution, not extreme self-denial, but a balanced middle path that leads to Nibbana, that ultimate state of peace where you extinguish the fires of greed, hatred, and ego.
Okay, so we have these incredibly profound, world-changing philosophies. But how do you share them? How do you teach them to everyone, not just scholars, in a way that lasts for thousands of years? Well, this brings us right back to where we started, back to the magnificent structure at Sanchi.
You see, stupas like the one at Sanchi weren't just mounds to honor the Buddha. Think of them as giant 3-dimensional storybooks carved out of stone. They were literally designed to teach these complex ideas about compassion and enlightenment to every single person who walked around them.
For instance, have a look at this amazing panel. Art historians figure this is a scene from something called the Vesantara Jataka. It's a story about a prince who was so incredibly generous that he gave away everything he had, even his own children, to practice the virtue of perfect charity. It's a visual lesson in selfless giving, right there in stone.
But here's where it gets really interesting. if you look closely, not all the carvings are strictly about Buddhist stories. See this beautiful figure of a woman holding onto a tree branch? That's a Shalabanjika, a symbol that's actually much older than Buddhism itself.
So what is she doing on a Buddhist monument? Well, this is just brilliant. The Shalabanjika was a popular pre-existing symbol of fertility and good luck. By including her in their sacred space, the builders of Sanchi were making their new message feel familiar and welcoming. They were connecting it to the beliefs people already held. Super smart, right? Of course, the fact that we can even see these stories today wasn't guaranteed. Sanchi is still standing because of the incredible foresight of the rulers of Bhopal, Shah Jahan Begum and her successor, Sultan Jahan Begum. They funded its preservation. This is a huge contrast to the fate of another great stupa at Amaravati. Its priceless sculptures were just taken away, scattered across the world. It's a sad but powerful lesson in why it's so important to preserve our heritage right where it belongs.
But you know, ideas never stay frozen in time, right? They grow, they change, they evolve. And as the centuries went by, these traditions kept developing, and entirely new ways of thinking and worshiping began to pop up all over India.
Within Buddhism itself, a major new movement called Mahayana, or the Great Vehicle, came about. It introduced this inspiring new ideal of the Bodhisattva, a being so compassionate that they delay their own nirvana to help every other living thing achieve enlightenment. They called the older tradition Hinayana, or the Lesser Vehicle, though its followers have always preferred the name Theravada, which means the Way of the Elders.
And at the same time, the Brahminical traditions were also transforming into what we now often call Puranic Hinduism. The focus started shifting towards devotion, or Bhakti, for specific gods, especially Vishnu and Shiva. The amazing idea of avatars, gods coming to Earth in different forms, became really central. And all of this created a need for a totally new kind of sacred space. The temple, a home for the gods here on Earth.
I mean, this period led to an absolute explosion of religious art and architecture. Just to give you a sense of the sheer scale of what they were doing, there's this quote, supposedly from the chief sculptor of the Kailashnatha temple at Ellora, a whole temple carved from a single massive rock. After finishing it, he just looked at it and said, "Oh, how did I make it?" It just shows the mind-blowing power of human creativity and faith.
And this brings us to one last big question for you to think about. We can study the texts, we can analyze the art, we can do all the research, but can we ever truly, completely know what these incredible images meant to the people who saw them for the very first time, 2,000 years ago? It's just a little reminder that history isn't only about facts, it's also about trying to understand and connect with the past.
We might not have all the answers, but exploring these incredible thinkers, their powerful beliefs, and the amazing buildings they inspired gives us a profound connection to our past, and it helps us understand the ideas that are still shaping our world today. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I really hope that the next time you see an ancient temple or a stupa, you won't just see a building. You'll see a timeless story carved in stone.